Welcome back to the Roadside Rescue YouTube channel this morning. We're going to be down in a different town, so normally I don't work outside of Provo here within a couple minutes, but we're already going to be down here working on another one of my long-standing customers' vehicles. So I said, hey, I'll accept this job. This is going to be a big one. It's one of those cases where this person's really good about maintaining their vehicles, and we're going to be basically replacing every single fluid on the vehicle and doing tons of routine maintenance, spark plugs, all the fluids, brakes and rotors. So I expect this to take several hours, probably about 3 hours. It's gonna be a big job. We'll head down there. I'll try and keep everything, concise. It may end up being a long video. We'll see how it goes. Here we go. I'm just taking my time before I head down there, half an hour away, to make sure I have everything I need. I've got O2 sensor wrenches in here, one's low profile. In fact, I think this might be an O2 sensor wrench as well. So this is like just all the different sockets that you would need for different sensors on a vehicle. Locking lug nut keys, because I don't want to have to deal with not having the right locking lug nut. I think I pretty much got everything. I'm just getting, like coolant jug out, brake fluid, yeah. Just taking a minute before I head down there and forget something. Coolant's the hardest thing to recycle. I've actually got to take coolant to the recycling center over here, whereas like anything oil-based, power steering fluid, brake fluid, transmission fluid, oil, that can all get recycled at any parts store, but coolant's so hard to get rid of. It's like such a hassle. So I keep these extra 5-gallon jugs. I just take them over to the recycling center. People often ask about that. I don't know, wherever you live depends, but yeah, I've got to head across town to the recycling center, and it's out in the middle of nowhere, so. And shout out to whoever sent me this lubricant. It just showed up at my P.O. box one day. But basically, this is like a plant-based or plant-safe lubricant. It's supposed to like penetrate metals, and they put it in like a little spray bottle. It looks like, what's the brand of this? AIM, I guess. Yeah, so Google it. I don't know. I've never even heard from anybody. It just showed up, and I'm like, yeah, I'll use it. And it's worked super well. I put it on some of my tools, and I'm like, well, it's a lubricant, so I don't want to just be like, hey, this stuff works good the first day I use it. So for a couple of months, I've had it on some of my tools, and, just has like a fine tip applicator. And pretty awesome, so check it out. And yeah, it's like environmentally safe and conscientious, so pretty cool. All right, next I'm gonna do that upstream O2 sensor, and then I'll probably fold up, probably jack up the front of this vehicle. I'll see, we're doing brakes all around as well. I'm gonna see which side the drain plug's on, that side or that side. I'll jack up the opposite tire to start draining the oil so that that plug's at the bottom. And I'll start doing those brakes right after I do this O2 sensor while it's still low on the ground and easy to do. Then when I'm done with that brake, we'll have the jacks in under that side. I'll jack up the other side. We'll have the front up far enough that we're gonna slide under here, do transmission oil and coolant. So we're gonna have to bleed those out as well. We're gonna do power steering, but that one's a little bit easier to bleed. With it being on the ground is usually just fine. Well, I assume the upstream O2 sensor would be right here on the manifold, and I'm not seeing it, so I'll probably just wait till I get underneath the vehicle to do that. That'll be nice to do before I drain all the fluids in case some get on the ground and then I have to roll around in that oil. So we'll drain fluids last, but we'll go ahead and jack up one side. I'll find out here in just a second which. To start draining that oil, while we drain the oil, I'll do brakes on one side just as fast as I can. Usually I can do a whole set of brakes. I'm doing rotors as well within about less than 10 minutes on each side, so that's the plan. Well, I feel like I'm playing a game of chess here. My plan keeps adapting, and I remembered when I was going to pick up that side that I've got to bleed the brakes. So I think I'm going to start on this rear corner, and before I move up to, you know, do the other side and then the front up there, and then I'll start draining the oil when I get up there. Because I'm bleeding the brakes, you want to start with the one that's furthest away from the reservoir with the longest lines. That's this corner, so I'm going to start here and get these brakes bleeding completely as I'm done. That way I don't replace the brakes and then have to go back and bleed them all. So back here is where we're going to start. That was tight. Oh, that one too. Oh, that one too. So I put these on way too tight. You can hear how hard that's hitting those. Those are way tight. Try getting those off by hand. That's pretty tough. One's a little rusty. These aren't two-piece, so it's not going to swell up like crazy, but it's just a little swollen from rust there. So got stuck in my socket, but that's a good sign that your sockets are nice and tight on the tolerances. So let's get that jack stand under here before I do anything else. Set up my oil pan, which is also acceptable for brake fluid. You can recycle brake fluid with engine oil, and I'm going to go ahead and suck out that brake fluid out of the reservoir. I'm going to use this. I was just going to use that Mighty Vac. I went ahead and grabbed both of these because this one looks like it's going to be pretty easy to do power steering and stuff with as well, and then that can be used just for bleeding. Actually just pulling a vacuum on the system. So that's my plan. Looks like this is going to work pretty well. And I'm not sure what the difference is here. Oh, this one will stop up in the end of something. This little one's got a rubber stopper so you can jam it into something and probably create a bit of a vacuum, and this one's just a stick. So pretty cool. First time I've seen these, but we will see how this works. I figured it out. It is, I'm like, why does this not fit? This one's smaller and this one is an extra extension. So if you have to get into a smaller space, you have to connect the two because this one is not going to fit by itself. So I don't know how I feel about this being quite so long just to get down to this little narrow one, but we'll see how it works. Okay. Yeah, that brake fluid's old. Basically, we should be able to stick this down into the depths of the reservoir here. If I can take out this pre-filter. And let me just set this on a rag here so I don't get it on any paint. Now I should be able to jam this down into the bottom and suck all the fluid out. It's working. Wow, there's quite a lot of fluid in there. I wasn't expecting quite so much. You know what? I just plugged the end with my finger. Put it in my drain pan. And do it again. Just brake fluid's a little touchy. I don't like to get any drops on anything. All right, Okay, there's the rest of that. And now we'll just plug this off for now and set it somewhere where it's not going to get on any paint. I mean, it does what I expected to do. Doesn't blow my mind. Definitely not one of my favorite tools, but gets the job done. Okay, now I've got some DOT4 brake fluid. We'll want to top this off before we pull air through the lines, and it's not going to make that much of a difference because we're bleeding everything anyways, but we can keep air out of the ABS system and not have to deal with any headaches that may possibly arise. So yeah, I guess I could have put that little pre-filter back in, but I'm confident that this new bottle isn't going to have anything in it. Okay, that's topped off. You can top it all the way to the brim if you're confident it's not going to spill, because we're going to be sucking fluid through anyways. We're going to have to top it off when we're done. It's a great time to bleed brakes when you're replacing all four, because ideally you don't have to top off your brake fluid in the future. The brake fluid level when it gets to low is an indicator of how much brake pad life you have left. All right, so here we are. We've got some classic small rotors back here that are held on by screws. Now, as most people, do not like or appreciate this design. It's been put in place because in the factory, rotors would fall off the line before the tires got put on or before the calipers got put on to hold them on. So kind of as a safety measure for the factory alone, they put screws in the rotors to hold them in place. But they rust up, they're hard to take out. And historically, I've always drilled them out. I don't even try to get them out first with a screwdriver. In fact, they're a special size bit. Everybody is adamant about that. I don't really know if I believe that or not, but anyways, I have, however, gotten an impact driver. My thing is, I drill them out every single time because I don't reuse them. Nobody reuses them. There's no reason to. They're not going to fall off and break my toes, and that's the only reason they were there in the first place. Anyways, I'm going to try this impact screwdriver, but if I don't like it, I'm just going to return it, or maybe I'll keep it around for anything else, but just to use these on these little screws, man, I'm fairly confident I'm going to go back to drilling them out, just because, like I said, I don't even try to reuse these things. So we'll give it a shot. If this doesn't work quickly, then I've got my drill. See if we can get this on. No trick to that, huh? Tap it in there. Yeah. Well, so far not living up to my expectations. I've already wasted more time trying to get this bit into the head of this bit driver here, and it's not really wanting to go in. Oh, there it goes. Okay, I guess it was needed a lucky touch. Let's see, we should be going, left out, man. I don't even know how to set this thing. Got my drill if we need it. Well, yeah, somebody let me know if I'm not using this thing right, but I've set it to one side and smacked it with a hammer and nothing's moved. So I think I'm going to return this unless somebody tells me in the comments, hey, it's something real obvious that you're doing wrong. I'm going to go grab my drill real quick. All right, well, I think maybe I figured it out. I tried a different method of standing up with it and trying to push in as I hit it a little bit harder, and either the bottom one wasn't quite as rusty, or I figured it out. So I'll give this another try on the other side. Maybe it'll stick around. We'll see. We got these screws out. That's all that matters. Because you can't get these out, you can't replace the brakes or the rotor. Just the rotor. Now what I like to do is put the brake pad, either rotor or pad box underneath here, so when I clean it with cleaner and it drips down, it doesn't stain the driveway or the garage in this case, or wherever we may be. Let's go ahead and take this caliper off and start moving a little bit quicker here. Just keep those loose. And we've got parking brake connected to these. Usually they give you enough room to get these out of the way without having to undo another wire or something, but occasionally we gotta undo something else to get these out of the way. Let's see. I think we got enough room. Another thing that will make these very hard to get off, which I wasn't able to do by hand, and when I put a pry bar on here, or screwdriver, pry bar, I noticed that's pretty tight. If this is connected to the handbrake or parking brake, it's probably set. Let's go check. Much better. Should come out now. There you go. Maybe we have just enough room with that parking brake there. Let's find out. There we go. Okay. Overall pad condition, plenty of life left on them. There are some grooves in this rotor and a crack right here. And a crack, some cracks right here, so definitely good to get that replaced. There's another crack. There's one. Yep, plenty of cracks. Definitely want to replace this rotor. Okay. Okay, well, I'm giving my hands a breather. They were sweating like crazy in those gloves. We'll go ahead and clean this here. Again, the box is underneath here. So any drippage goes right into the box. Okay, now let's get the rest of that caliper off and replace the rotor. Sweaty hands. Go. There's that. These are pretty sticky. They're not seized up, but definitely going to clean those up. I mean, we would do that regardless, but there comes this rotor. Usually, from what I've seen, that's usually a sign that the rotor is warped when it doesn't come just straight off like that. Could be a couple other things. Could be a ring of rust right here, which there is. But a lot of times when it doesn't just pull straight off like that, it's a sign that your rotor's warped. But the best sign is your steering wheel shakes while you brake. And here you can really see all those cracks in there. Just all the way around everywhere, so definitely good to replace that. All right, these are real nice rotors. They're actually drilled and they've got some small slots. Wow. They are even, this is a nice kit. It's even specific to the rear passenger side and rear driver's side. Luckily I grabbed the right one. But yeah, that's nice because there aren't any cooling fins on this back rotor here. You know, it's not a, doesn't have anything in the middle, so they'll be a little bit more aggressive on the pads, but this should help keep it quite a bit cooler during braking. This tool's pretty cool. It's and I used to have like those whole big box sets for screwing in rear calipers. I'll show you what I mean here in a second if you're not familiar. This one basically, it's got a little triple adjust inside there and a double adjust inside there, so it depends on what kind you have. This one's got, it's like cross 4 slots, so we'll just use the double side, and when you loosen it, it will reach in and grab and loosen that up for you. So pretty cool. I'm excited about this. And oh, the point I was getting to, I used to have those big old kits, but this is all I've ever, I mean, half the time I just do it with pliers, but I was like, hey, this tool looks pretty nice. It looks like it could fill up every single spot that those other ones do. And then I've got my little caliper compressors you'll see on the front brakes. I'll show you, but I'm not going to go through all the brakes. That these two together take up less room and work way better. So, well, I assume, I haven't used this yet, but looks like it's in theory going to work real well. Okay, here's what I was talking about. You have to screw these kind of calipers in. I've gotten several emergency call outs because people are like, I'm trying to replace my brakes and I can't do it. And I come out and they're using a C-clamp to try and push one of these in. So I'm like, well, you probably could have done it with pliers before you pushed on it so hard that now it's like real hard to turn. But, you know, you live and you learn. And these actually screw in. So I think righty-tighty. All right, so basically we just set this right into those grooves and we just turn. Let's see if I can. when it's attached to a parking brake, it's a little bit harder because you can't quite pull it out and work on it. But let's see if we can achicar esto. There we go. And gotta go tiny on this. Okay, that's about as tiny as it's gonna get. There we go. Bingo. There she goes. Dang it, why can't they just, oh, there it is. I was like, why couldn't they just put a bleeder valve on this rear caliper? Because I'm gonna have to bleed this now. Pull clean fluid through. They did. I didn't see it. It was hiding right behind that little tag right here. And we'll replace the hardware, put these pads in. It's taking way longer than it should on this side because I'm talking, but on the next ones, I'm not gonna go through anything. I'm just gonna do them, and we should have them done pretty quick, so. All right, so that hardware is all in, and we're gonna go ahead and bleed it here till clean fluid comes out. All right, and when space and angles and everything allows it, 100% of the time I prefer using a 6-point socket on these bleeder valves to pop them open. And that's your best chance of not stripping one of these out. So we'll go ahead, we've got that open. Just snug it back down a little bit. In fact, let me just hand snug it. There we go, get that just moving so I can put that bottle on there and move it by hand. I've got a pigment under there. If it drips, we'll catch that. And there's a goofy little vacuum pump that doesn't work super well by the looks of it. So I think, oh, for some reason there it wanted to go a little bit more and then it stopped. Okay, maybe I just had to get it warmed up. Anyways, should pull the fluid enough. I like to use the long hose, on the way to my vacuum pump, because one time I sucked brake fluid up into the vacuum pump and that completely destroyed all the gaskets inside of there. So lots of little tips and tricks in this video. But oh, the point I was getting to is if the hose is long, you can see if it's starting to come up the hose. If it's short, maybe one pump, boom, you sucked it up into your pump. So this long one, I can watch in case I get, I accidentally tip this over or something. I can see if I'm about to suck up any fluid into my vacuum. Okay, this looks like a gasket here. Is it gonna go right here? Looks like. That's nice. The other one I used to have, the Mightyvac brand, didn't have a gasket in here, so. There it goes. Let's put this on there. Okay. Just don't get brake fluid on anything. Okay. Here we go. Start to pull. Wow, that's dirty. There's not just dirty fluid, but there's tons of particles in there. It looks like it's already a bit cleaner, but that could just be fluid from the lines, and the fluid inside the caliper is dirty. I'm gonna make sure I just go ahead and basically fill up this little can. Right, what actually only took 10 milliliters, 1,000 milliliters, like a quarter, almost half of this little can to get really clean fluid coming out. So I'm gonna go ahead and just shut it off there. And we'll do this on every set of brakes when we do that. And it'll be completely bled when we're done. All right, looks like I got the hang of it. This may be faster if it works the first time like these both did than using a drill. So I'll keep this in my repertoire for now. Use it a few times, see if it makes sense still. And yeah, glad I gave it another shot. This side's done. All right, now the front, and I'm gonna drain that oil while I've got this side picked up. Then I'm gonna pick up the other side, do the other side, and crawl under there and get the rest of that stuff done while both sides are supported with the jack stand under the frame rail. All right, we got the oil draining. You can see it. Pretty dark under there. And let's go ahead and do these front brakes over here on this driver's side. That other brake tool, this is one of my all-time favorite tools. There's a link for all the tools I use in the description down below, but basically, let's flip this out of here. Those pads were really new. We're not gonna have to press much, but you just grab, squeeze the handle, pushes that back in. Yeah, those pads were super new. Anyways, we'll clean that up. grease it, and done on this side. Bleed this side before I put the tire back on. That's better. This is definitely the most time-consuming part of this job, is doing the brakes, but last one here. Then we've got to bleed the clutch. I think we're just probably going to replace fluid is probably what the idea is. And then we're going to drain the transmission and refill. And then we'll do power steering, which is easy, and coolant, which is easy. Takes a couple minutes, but I'll do that one after I'm done doing that O2 sensor. If I didn't mention that, we still got to do that because coolant tends to splash a little bit and I don't want to roll around in it. And on the last one, it's easier to draw out a little bit more fluid than you can see is necessary. That way it gets below the full mark in the reservoir and you can top it back off to the full mark rather than having to suck fluid out of the reservoir. That's why I'll just do it while you're here. There's number 4. All right, get that drain plug back in here. Just tight enough. And we'll slide this out of the way. For now, here's the O2 sensor we're going to be dealing with. And I'll do that. Then I'll fill this back up. Then I'll do the filter. Then the radiator. I should have a drain plug. There it is. That's nice. I've got a different coolant catch can here with me. And my fill funnel. And then transmission, we'll figure out where the drain plug is on this and the fill plug before I remove the drain plug. I'll make sure we got easy access to that. All right. There's that O2 sensor. Make sure that I didn't grab the downstream one just in case it was in front of that cat, but it's the upstream. I just wanted to be sure. Okay, a lot of times these new O2 sensors will have anti-seize on them. Oh, well, looky there. So I don't worry about putting anti-seize on those. If they don't come with it, then maybe I would, but if it actually, I think you have to change the torque if it has anti-seize. If I remember correctly on these, you tighten it all the way down by hand. And if it has anti-seize, you give it a 1/4 of a turn. And if it doesn't, you give it a 1/2 of a turn, or vice versa. Look on the box and they say, clean this up. Let's find that oil filter. Let's look at this transmission here. All right, let me do this oil filter while we're in here as well. You know, this one might make a mess. It's up here on the side of the block, but this has been sitting long enough that it shouldn't be super full. Oh, yes, it's hand tight. I love that. I love it when people do that right. Okay, yeah, oh, there's oil. You can see that. Just give this a moment to spill it out and then take her off the rest of the way. All right, now time for the coolant. And since I have several minutes to spare while I do other things, I'm just going to let it start to dribble out real slow instead of fast. When you let it go fast, obviously it drains faster, but it splashes a lot more. So I'm just going to let this come out steady and slow so I don't make a huge mess. And I'm going to need a pair of pliers. And while I do other things, I'll just let that come out. Start opening it up till it comes out. There we go. Splashy, splashy. Maybe I'll just set this in there so it can splash onto that rag and then drain off of it. Just so splashy. All right, now for the power steering, there's a few ways, well, 2 ways that I know of you can do this. What I'm probably going to do is suck the fluid up, fill it up with new fluid, turn the wheels to both sides a few times, pull that fluid back out, replace it, do that 4 or 5 times. You can also take the return line or the feed line going to the pump, take that off. Well, you probably just want to take the return. So you take the return line off and you run that down to your pan. You drain that. You'll want to plug that off after you do that. And then you will fill this up with new fluid and turn the wheel. As you keep new fluid coming into this, if you pull air in, then you're going to have to bleed the system. And that's what makes that one a little bit more tricky. So if that makes sense, when you're turning the wheel, it's sucking up brand new fluid, replacing the old fluid in the system as it goes. That old fluid's draining into your drain pan. You just don't want this to run empty as if you were bleeding the brakes, because bleeding power steering stuff's never fun. So we'll go ahead and get that suction thing. We'll pull that fluid out of there and put it into that drain pan. so here we go. We've got a huge difference in that power steering fluid's way clean now. That works well. I'm gonna go ahead and just put it back to its full mark. Here, let me borrow this light. Let me see. Typically, I hardly ever recommend that people replace power steering fluid. It's one of those things that people try and upsell you on. This is definitely one though I would be like, wow, that fluid's real dark. You might consider replacing it. So good to get that done. So yeah, I've got bug fluid, running windshield wiper fluid, so put that in for him since it's here. Yeah, I mean, one thing obviously I didn't show filling up the oil, but that's, you want to do that before you start the car to cycle that power steering through. If you don't turn it on and the pump's not flowing any, it's not pushing any fluid through. So let's turn it on for a few seconds. I was fine doing that without any coolant since, you know, ran for a total of probably 30 seconds on those 3 cycles. So definitely not even going to get warm. And the coolant literally just stopped dripping. It's been about 15 minutes since that started draining, but it also helped when I ran it the first time to cycle some of that coolant through the engine. It seemed like it started coming out a little bit more steady after that, after it had started slowing down a bit. But it's completely done, so we'll close that back up, top it off, and then we've just got transmission, so clutch and transmission, that's it. And we're almost done here. All right, we've got that petcock closed on the radiator again. Let's see if we can open up this coolant. It's over tight. There we go. And we'll go ahead and top this off. If you wait long enough, it'll seep past that thermostat into the engine. If I run out of time though, and it doesn't seem like it's got enough fluid, I'll just run it for a few minutes until it opens up, and then you should see the level in here drop. And this is the highest point on the cooling system at this point, so any air is going to come up to here. All right, we've got that petcock closed on the radiator again. Let's see if we can open up this coolant. It's over tight. There we go. And we'll go ahead and top this off. If you wait long enough, it'll seep past that thermostat into the engine. If I run out of time though, and it doesn't seem like it's got enough fluid, I'll just run it for a few minutes until it opens up, and then you should see the level in here drop. And this is the highest point on the cooling system at this point, so any air is going to come up to here. Then when you're doing this, you want to put the heater on high so that it circulates and gets all the air all the way through the heater core, which is, without this, usually the highest point in the cooling system. I've got the front end of this jacked up enough though, and depending on the vehicle, may not be the case for this one. All right, so there's that coolant's filled up, the heater's blowing hot air. And I like to just leave a rag in here with my stuff. My fill jug, in case there's some coolant left behind, it can absorb some of that moisture. This went all the way through. Goodness. Put the radiator cap back on. All right, so last thing here, 2 last things. We're gonna fill up the transmission, and it does just trip out like a normal manual transmission, and we'll bleed the clutch. Although that fluid, just in comparison to the other one, that was dark. This one doesn't look as bad, but anyways, I got my little fluid pump thing. We'll just suck that out, top it back off, and pull new fluid all the way through to the cylinder there, and then make sure this is at its full level. So that reservoir actually had some nasty stuff in it, which is what happens when water gets in that brake fluid, like turns chunky and stuff. And I flushed it out 3 times, then I took a rag when it was dry and cleaned out the inside. It looks way better now. And we're gonna go ahead and bleed that throwout cylinder down there. Then we'll do the transmission oil and we'll be done. All right, I just got this manual transmission oil drained. I've got the fill plug out, so I'm gonna go ahead and run my hose to it, and we'll top it off till it starts spilling out that hole. And finally done, man. This has been a long job. I think these caps are the same size. This is my preferred method for filling up. Yeah, so it's a lot easier to just squeeze them from the bottle. I actually cut this hose the other day and made it a little bit shorter. Probably should have cut the one that was already shorter. So I should take 2 of these completely and then a little bit of the third. That's a job well done.